Live. Hi, I'm Rayanna Starr coming to you live in my Facebook group, The Unstoppable Real Estate Investor. I'm here with our guest for today's podcast, Chris Logan. He's a virtual wholesaler. He loves what he's doing. He's happy to share helpful tips to pay it forward and share what he's doing. He's a new dad with a 7-month-old at home eating peas in the background, which we can't hear, but I love the visual of that. Yeah. So Chris, welcome. Welcome to the podcast. It's so good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Rihanna. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here, and I'm really glad you couldn't. He was yelling before, so I just wanted to make sure you couldn't hear that through. But no, I'm happy to be here today. And like I was telling you offline before, I love talking to other people's community, people being on podcasts, and just helping other people shorten the learning curve to have faster results in real estate. So thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So Chris, why don't we start with what were you doing before you got into real estate investing? What was your background before that?
Yeah, sure. So before I got started in real estate, I actually did a combination of things. I used to work for Verizon Wireless selling cell phones back in the day. And far back, I used to be those, I don't know if anyone remembers this that's on the call here today, but you know, they used to have those booths in the mall and you had those annoying people like yelling at you and saying, "Hey, what phone service do you have?" That's exactly what I used to do. I did that a long, long time ago. Then transitioned into working in corporate America, a 9 to 5, for a marketing agency that helped small to medium-sized businesses get more leads and get more business. So that's what I was doing when I transitioned from that into real estate.
All right, I like it.
Yeah.
I'm just sending everybody the Zoom link in case people want to hop on and we turned it into a little
Yeah, sure.
discussion. But so background sales,
Mm-hmm.
go-getter, interacting with people.
Mm-hmm.
So when did the real estate investment bug bite you? How did that story? Tell us that story.
Yeah, great question. So I was actually coming out of church one day, and one of my friends came up to me, and he's like, "Hey, you talked about wanting to get started in real estate. I have a great book that you should read, and it's Rich Dad Poor Dad." So we all know that book, right?
Yeah, so many people have started with that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was a life-changing book for me because it opened my eyes. It was kind of like I was waking up from the Matrix, right? It opened my eyes to what was possible, how a lot of the things that I knew and were taught were completely wrong, and the new way that I should focus on doing things, right? So that really piqued my interest. And so I was at my girlfriend's house. She's now my wife. I was at my girlfriend's house back in the day, and I was on my computer checking my email. And then after I finished reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, strangely enough, there was this banner ad that came up that said Robert Kiyosaki was coming to Tampa Bay. And I was like, I want to go to this. I love this book. I just want to shake his hand, tell him how awesome he is and how great of a book it was, right? And so she came with me because I didn't want to go by myself. Shocker, he wasn't there, right? It was someone from his team that was there. But anyway, we got a lot of value out of it, and it gave us just enough info to take that next step, which was like a 3-day event. And they drew up all the different types of strategies you could do to make money in real estate. And right, and everybody here that's on the Zoom, there's a lot, right? And so they put up on the board creative finance. They talked about developing land. They talked about fix and flipping, like the guys on HGTV. They talked about wholesaling. And for me, when I was first getting started in real estate, I didn't have a lot of money, right? I had like zero connections because I just moved to where I was. So not a lot of resources, right? But I was resourceful. And so when I saw on the board that you could take literally a piece of paper and you could flip that piece of paper for tens of thousands of dollars, you didn't have to worry about banks. You didn't have to have good credit, tons of money in the bank, a rich uncle, all the above, right? I was just like, man, this makes sense and I want to do it. So I turned to my girlfriend and I said, let's do it. She was like, okay. So at that point, we went in as business partners and we signed up for a wholesaling course. And yeah, from there, it's history. Took us 6 months to do our first deal. Did everything wrong. If there was like a list of things you could write a book of all the wrong things you can do in real estate, I checked them all. Right.
All right, talk about that.
Yeah, sure.
Because we learn from those mistakes.
Uh-huh.
And I love that girlfriend is now your wife. So I want to hear a little bit about that too.
Sure.
But talk about all the mistakes because that's where we learn.
Oh boy. So, so mistake number one was I went ahead and put a property under contract without having any buyers, right? So one of those that I share with my clients is, find your buyer first. You want to build relationships with buyers first if you're going to be wholesaling, right? And then from there, once you have those relationships with the buyer, just find what they want and then bring it to them, right? It makes the whole process much easier. So I was really stressing out when I put a property under contract because I had no idea I was going to sell it. No buyers in sight, didn't know what I was doing. And so that was really stressful. So that was thing number one, right? The next thing that I did is like the seller was selling this property in an area that typical wholesale deals, it's not a wholesaler, it's like a luxury area, right? Back then the house was 600,000. Today it's probably like a $2 million house. But anyway, with that property, the seller had a for sale by owner sign on the front. And what I did is I was just like, this seller's getting a lot of leads from this sign for buyers and they're not coming to me. So I'm going to fix that. So I chopped down her sign and on her property, and I put my sign up and had to go to my number. And sure, I got a lot of people. I showed the property to a lot of buyers. They got some traction. But I got a really nasty and very frustrated call from that homeowner. Told me never to do it again. I apologized. And she put her sign back up. So that was another mistake. Then I had a buyer come through that seemed like he was going to be a great buyer for the property. And I believe I had this one under contract for 600,000 or so. And so what I told the guy, so I wanted to make a $30,000 fee for my wholesale fee, right? For my first deal. I'm like, I'm going to knock on my mark on my first deal. So I told the guy, hey, if he's like, how much is this property? I said, 600,000, but you have to pay me $30,000 to get it at that price. And he's like, so wait a second, I'm paying 630. And I'm like, no, you're paying 600. You're paying 30 to get it at that price. Make sense? And he's like, no, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, shoot, I'm a failure. So there's a lot of mistakes like that. And there's just a lot more, but that just gives you the tip of the iceberg of mistakes that I made.
Right. So if I got this right, and I've been typing them in the chat.
Yeah.
Find your buyers first. Don't do misleading things. Don't be greedy and be transparent.
Exactly. And really the things that I did in the beginning was just kind of out of ignorance. I didn't know that you couldn't do it. And there's a lot of things you have to learn the hard way, right? And so those are some of the things, but really it's this business is about massive, imperfect, immediate action, right? So there's a lot of people who get into this and they think they have to know everything before they start. They feel like I have to, binge watch education for a year and a half, 2 years before I even start because I don't want to make
more.
More.
I was a coach at Fortune Builders and coached literally
exactly
thousands of real estate investors, and especially really analytical people struggle with that because analytical people are just hardwired to get all the information, all the detail. These are the investigators, the engineers, the mathematical people, and they need all of the information, all of the steps, all the details, and then they will take action because their motivation is perfection. Their motivation is to do it right. Absolutely. So what I do with people like that is I'll break it down and I'll say, here's the whole system. There's a lot of skills you're going to learn. Right now, you're just going to learn how to research your market. This is what you're going to do. And you're going to do this skill and only that. And so it's learn and take action, learn and implement, because it's overwhelming otherwise. And when people get overwhelmed, they get frozen and they don't take action.
100%.
Yeah.
So too many programs out there, they have 3,000 videos you have to go in and watch and go watch them all. And you feel like you're on Netflix, like binge watching, you're right, not taking any action. So yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more with you.
Okay, keep going on the story. You said you had a story that you wanted to share about virtual wholesaling earlier before we got started. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, for sure. So when I first started, I was local wholesaling. So I was driving to all the houses, meeting sellers belly to belly. Sellers tell us that they'd be there at the house. We wait for 30 minutes. They're not there. They say, oh, I'm not coming by today. Come on by tomorrow. You do the drive of shame home, right? So we grew our business. We grew to the point where my wife at one point was doing the acquisition. So she was meeting with all the sellers, and it got to a point where, she was going on like 15 appointments a week, and she would come home just like exhausted from all the driving and appointments she did. So I was like, there's got to be a better way. This was about 2 years before COVID. So at that point, we're like, some of these properties, we've been able to get the seller to say yes over the phone, right? So what if we got them to say yes more often over the phone, right? So what if we did, instead of have this be a little part of our business, why don't we try to do this on every deal, right? So we started out with, 50% local to driving the houses, and then 50% over the phone. And then we gradually increased it to 75%, 25, and then 80, and so on. We went to 100%. So we were 100% closing over the phone 2 years before COVID. Then when COVID happened, right, when everybody was panicking, going crazy because, sellers would not let these investors in their house. How are they going to get contracts? How are they going to put food on the table for their families? Oh my gosh, crazy, right? Everyone was flipping out. We were like, wow, we're really glad we made this transition, right? And so a lot of wholesalers were coming to us with their deals that they couldn't sell because they couldn't meet buyers at properties. We were buying and selling properties 100% over the phone, right? And we had these sellers that were coming to us and being like, hey, if you can move forward without coming to see the property, then yeah, I'll move forward with you. And we could get these houses at a complete steal because there was no competition whatsoever. All of them pretty much got eliminated. So we were very fortunate and blessed that we went to virtual 2 years before COVID. So when that happened for us, we actually had one of our best years during COVID. So
now, so there's three, and correct me if you think there's more than this, but there are three kinds of wholesaling campaigns you can do. One is you do a cold seller outreach. You buy the list, you skip trace it.
Yep.
You get an auto dialer and a VA, and you grind away and you hunt for motivated sellers. It's the most expensive and takes the longest. And a lot of people are still doing that. A modification of that is you get really niched into like foreclosures or probates, or you find a very specific niche. So there's that. Then there's the on-market campaign where you use a tool like Privy, or you have access to the MLS, and you're looking for distressed properties that are listed on the MLS, and you're making offers on those. And there's a lot out there. Problem with that one, that's probably the easiest one because you don't even have to call. You can make offers via an email, attach a letter of intent, a proof of funds, but you're not just competing with other investors, you're also competing with retail buyers that want a deal and might be willing to move into a fixer-up and just tinker with it over the years. And then you also have agent outreach where you don't do any searching, you don't buy any lists, but it takes longer to get going because you're building relationships with agents, and that requires a system and you planning and being strategic. And then you're having the agents send you off-market pocket listings. Just curious which one of those you do and why.
Yeah, no, great question. This is probably one of the most fun questions that I get asked, and I love answering this. So the way that we actually had the most success was through cold calling. So we've done pretty much every single marketing channel that you can think of. I've done direct mail, we've done PPC, PPL, pay per lead, we've done reaching out to agents, we've done all that stuff. And the one that was the easiest for us and was the most scalable was cold calling, because the cost per lead was virtually nothing when I was doing it myself outside of my time. I did it for about 90 days. And then after I did it for 90 days, I decided to hire a VA that could do it for me. And I gradually scaled my team up to, I had 10 callers. They're all making calls. In our top month, we had 23 properties under contract. And it was by far the best decision that we've made with our marketing. And it is still our top marketing channel. Matter of fact, in the busiest, in the most competitive markets that we've had in the last 10 years in 2021, we were getting leads at $67 a piece from cold calling. And so cold calling was really the key to our explosive growth that we had. It's not for everybody, right? Not everybody likes cold calling. It may not be for everybody, but it was something that we found that was something that dramatically lowered our bottom line from direct mail. Direct mail is very expensive. At one point, we were doing over 30,000 pieces a month, and the overhead was just insane for that. So what we found was doing cold calling, it makes it, we were just getting to sellers faster than most people. We were also getting deals, and it's something that worked really well for us. So cold calling has really been our specialty.
Okay. So you're buying the lists,
Mm-hmm.
skip tracing them. Do you have a particular niche, or do you rotate around? And are you calling in a local market? Tell us more.
Yeah, great question. So what I do is we start off with the motivated list first, right? So, typical lists like tax delinquent, vacant, all those, a list that we've seen really work well in today's market, because, a lot of homeowners right now, owners to move because of where the interest rate was, right? They're not only moving to a higher interest rate if they sell their house. Let's say they have a house and they're like at a 3% right now, or 4%, and they sell their house and they'll have like a 7 or 8% interest rate, right? And then they're also getting half the house size because houses have gotten more expensive over the years. So right now, it's super important to make sure that you're focusing on the right sellers. Okay, so a lot of mistakes that people are making right now are focusing on the wrong type of homeowner, the type of homeowner that's like, I'd sell if I got this binary number, but that's the reason why a lot of people are not having success. So one of the sellers that we have really honed in on is sellers that are downsizing right now. 10,000 people a day are retiring, and there's so much opportunity out there. It's insane for people who are downsizing, because a lot of these people, they don't care what the interest rate is because they're moving in with their kids, right? Maybe they're moving to a rental or some condo on the beach or something, and they're just looking to cash out. Same thing with tired landlords right now. People who have owned properties for 15, 20 years, right? The big opportunity there with those is they've been trying to time the market this entire time. They're like, oh, I'm going to wait. It's going up. It's going up. It's going up. Right. And then they realize they miss it. And they're like, okay, well, I may as well sell now, because I'm going to get the most money I ever can for the property, right, in the near future. So those people are really wanting to sell right now. So a lot of our marketing is to the traditional, motivation, right? Like code violations, tax delinquent, vacant, all that, right? But we've really been focusing the bulk of our marketing on people who are homeowners who are downsizing, and tired landlords, people who are tired of dealing with tenants and toilets. They've done it for too long.
Okay. Yeah. And what market are you in?
Yeah. We're in Florida and North Carolina. Those are the two markets that we
Where
cover.
in North Carolina? The whole state?
Charlotte Metro. We have buyers in the whole state, but the bulk of our buyers are in the Charlotte Metro area.
Are you guys in Florida or North Carolina?
Florida.
Okay.
Yep.
I live in North Carolina. I'm in Asheville. I'm on the west side of the state.
Oh, nice. Very cool. No, North Carolina is amazing. And we chose that. It just happened to be a great real estate market. I'd love to tell you I had an amazing formula and everything for picking that. We do have a formula, but when we picked North Carolina, it was because we had family that lived there, and we're like, man, this area is really nice. It reminded us of where Tampa Bay was in Florida 5 years before it really caught on. And so we were really excited to go there. And that's why we picked that. But we have an entirely different reason we picked
so I have
now.
a question for you, because I've done some wholesaling in North Carolina, and I'm not anymore.
Yeah.
I coach people a lot on wholesaling. I'm at a point in my life, even running a team to do it, it's not what I want to focus on.
Sure. Yeah.
But one of the challenges is, how do you deal with that non-refundable due diligence deposit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because in North Carolina and South Carolina, they both require due diligence deposits that are written directly to the seller. And even if you do your due diligence and you find something that kills the deal for you that's legitimate, you still forfeit your due diligence deposit no matter what. And I'll tell you, it hurts. I've walked away from a couple of those. You get your earnest money deposit back if you cancel a contract in the due diligence period. So how do you get around that as a wholesaler?
Yeah. So our deposit on every property is $100. So, we really, that's not a problem. That's not an issue that we've run into yet. Maybe it could be something in the future, but we also had an attorney draft, and I can't remember the exact verbiage on there, but we had an attorney draft a clause to our contract that basically says that that we don't really have to put down a deposit. There's more ins and outs to it, but and it still makes the contract binding. We paid an attorney like $250 to do it, and it was totally worth every penny. But when we do have to put down a deposit, it's really just like $100 per property. So
Which
even
is
if you make a
easier to
mistake,
walk away from than say 500 or 1,000.
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we were putting down $500 to $1,000 in every property. And here's the thing: if you are doing direct to agent, like you were talking about before, making offers in the MLS, I mean, it's not uncommon to put 500, 1,000, or even 1% of the purchase price down as a deposit, and that hurts, right? If you have to walk away from that. So, so
well,
yeah, that's
there's
why we put
two different deposits. The earnest money deposit you get back if you cancel during the due diligence period. It's that due diligence deposit. Not all states have that. That's
yeah. Maybe the reason we haven't run into that yet is because we've worked, all of our marketing is direct to seller. We don't do direct to agent. We don't make offer on market properties.
That's
so I'm
why.
sure you run into that on that for sure. But you know, and you know, they probably did that to throttle a lot of these newbies coming in who don't know what they're doing. And they're just blasting out offers like crazy.
Yeah, they want the due diligence, the earnest money, and the proof of funds, like right when you sign the contract, right?
If you ask me, I think that's a great thing to do because it really weeds out the people who are not serious, you know. So
talk about like how long have you been wholesaling, and how long did it take you to get your first deal, and you know, what are you kind of averaging? Give us kind of some of the background so people get a realistic idea of how long it takes to actually ramp up and get some momentum and start seeing some consistency.
Absolutely. So when we first started, it took us 6 months to do our first deal. I'd love to tell you guys that, you know, we did, you know, 10 deals on our first month because we hustled and grinded and all that stuff. But no, that didn't happen. It took us 6 months to do our first deal. And I find that it takes most people that long. Some people it takes even up to a year to do their first deal, right?
Yeah, it takes a year, 18 months. And you have to admire the tenacity of people who don't give up. They're just determined. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And the people that get into wholesaling to make quick money because the money is all they want, when they don't see that money in the first 30, 60, 90 days, they burn out and they're done, right? So the difference between the wholesalers that make it versus the ones that don't, who say, I'm going to play the long game here. I'm going to hone in on my craft. I'm going to beat on my craft. I'm going to put in the time, become an expert at this, and I will be successful come heck or high water. Those are the people that I find that become successful, right? So it took us 6 months to do our first deal. And then after we got our first deal, I want to say the next deal came like the following month. It's kind of funny how that happens. It takes forever to do your first deal, but after your first one, the next one comes right after that. I've seen that from multiple people. But then it takes some time to get things consistent, right? Because you're trying to understand what type of marketing works the best. You're doing a lot of testing, and you're not really tracking.
And you have to be willing to experiment and keep tweaking. That's why it's so important that you have a process, that you are tracking things. For example, I was coaching a client who's been wholesaling for like 3 years, and he's tried different kinds of campaigns. And they were cranking out a lot of offers. Getting the offers out was not the issue. They were cranking a lot out and they weren't getting things under contract. And this went on for a while. And I kept saying, well, you got to look at your offers. Let's look at your offers. Or there's something that needs to be tweaked because they were getting 100 to 150 offers out a week.
Wow, that's a lot of offers.
Yeah, they were cranking out 25, 50 offers a week. It was a lot. And I said, you're doing that because they kept saying, it's just a numbers game. And I said, no, because months and months went on. And I said, at this point, it is not a numbers game. That is not
the madness.
That is not the issue. The issue is there's something in the way you're making offers, there's something in the way you're doing it that is. So I said, here's what you need to do. You need to go back and evaluate the last 3 or 6 months of all the offers you did, and then go look at, and I said, this is going to be tedious. get one of your VAs to gather the data or something for you, so you don't have to spend the time, but it will be worthwhile to do this and evaluate all the deals you've done. What happened, like evaluate where they got sold, what they got sold for. And he and his chief operating officer, his partner, they both had these epiphany awakenings, each in different pieces. One was in a formula he created in his analyzer about the maximum allowable offer divided by the list price formula. And if it's, over 75%, it's a good chance that, and it's not based on the offer.
Yeah.
And there was something else too, and I don't remember because this was quite some time ago, that it was just eye-opening for them. So talk a little bit about that, about tracking results, about it took 6 months to get your first deal, how you learned by doing, and then the refining. And you can't just be a robot going, well, if you've done 100 offers and you haven't gotten something under contract,
There's
because the industry standard is for every 50 sellers, you should make about 25 offers. Half of those should turn into offers to get one deal. That is an industry standard. When you're new and less skilled, those numbers are going to be higher. You're going to burn through a lot more leads. But as you get better, your numbers can actually come in under that industry average. So talk a little bit about that, Chris.
Yeah, sure. So that's the part, I'm glad you touched on that, because that's the part that a lot of people don't take into consideration.
Right.
A lot of people are like, oh, it takes this many leads to get a contract or this many offers to get a seller to say yes, right? But sometimes those numbers are based on a seasoned person who's been doing this for a long time. It's not taking into account like the newbie, right? So there's
something in your deal analyzer, something in the way you're making offers that you need to tweak, and you need to know what the problem is in order to solve it.
Yeah. So in the beginning, it's very important that you're tracking your numbers, right? What do I mean by tracking numbers, right? So let's give you an example. So when I first started, I did bandit signs. I don't know if you guys have heard of those. The plastic signs on the side of the road. I thought no one would ever.
We've all heard of those.
Signs. Yeah. Got it. Cool. So I was putting out those, right? So what I was tracking was how many signs I was putting out. And when I'd put them out, how many phone calls I would get based on that. And out of those phone calls, how many of those did it take for a seller to say yes, to get a seller in the line that would say yes, right? So that's what I tracked in the beginning. So most people don't do that. So most people, they hear these numbers, like Rihanna, you were just saying, right? And they're like, oh, that's a benchmark. And they push and push and push. And when they don't get that, they're like, okay, it doesn't work. That's not the case, right? So what you have to look at what your numbers are. So you want to track your numbers. And it may take you, 300 calls to get a contract, where it could take someone else maybe 100 calls, right? Or 60 calls. So what everybody else's number is doesn't even matter. What matters is, what are your numbers? And if you know your numbers, it's also motivating too, because let's give you an example. Let's say it takes you, 60 calls to get a contract, or 70 calls to get a contract, right? So if it takes you that, and let's say you've gotten a lot of no's, and it takes you 70 calls to get a contract, you've gotten a lot of no's, and you're at call number 65, and you're like, oh, this is so frustrating. All these sellers have told me no, and I want to give up, right? That's what the person says who's not tracking their numbers. The person that does track their numbers is saying, I'm at 5. I know it takes me 70. I got 5 more to go, baby. Come on, let's get these no's out of the way and let's get that yes. That if you are tracking your numbers like that, it's so much more motivating, because you know where you're at. And nothing is more discouraging than putting in massive amounts of effort, have an idea where there's like an end in sight, and you're just like crossing your fingers and throwing baloney against the wall, hoping it sticks. There is no motivation in that whatsoever. And that's why people quit. So if there's anything that I would do differently much sooner when I first started, is I would track my numbers. And I started sooner than most because I came from that marketing company, but so many people are not doing that. And, you hear these numbers on podcasts. I'm going to, share with you my numbers and things like that. And then you're like, oh, if it's not Chris Logan's or Rihanna's numbers, then I'm a failure. No, that's not the case. I didn't start here, neither did Rihanna, right? And so you need to track your numbers,
Yeah,
know your numbers, and then put in the effort and get the results.
love it. So how long have you been doing wholesaling?
Yeah.
Total?
So we've been doing wholesaling for a little over 10 years. We've been out
Oh,
of corporate.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've been out of corporate America for probably 8 years and haven't looked back. Wholesaling is the vehicle that we use to get out of corporate America and have financial freedom. So
You're a top 5%er. That's why you're here. Yay.
yeah, so
Nice.
that's the reason why like I have a personal connection to wholesaling. It's what got us out of the rat race and got us focusing in real estate full time. We've over 600 deals and grew our company to over 7 figures. And so that's where we took our company. And it didn't happen overnight, guys. So if you hear someone on a podcast like, oh, I did $1 million in my second year, focus on getting your first deal, right? Then focus on getting the next one. And then focus on getting the next one after that. Watch your own grass. That's all that matters, because we didn't get there overnight. It took us a while, right? I would say it took us almost 2 or 3 years to get to, I think 2 years to get to 6 figures, right? In wholesaling. And then it took us probably 5 years to get to multiple 6 figures, right? And then it took us, I would say, probably 7 years total, right, to get to 7 figures. So that's the main thing to keep in mind, guys. This is a journey. Nothing happens overnight. And if you look at my journey and you look at other people, there's other people who got there much faster than I did, right? But I don't care about that because I focus on what works for me and
what you have control over. Now,
exactly.
Are you guys only doing wholesaling, or have you invested some of your wholesale income into buying like rentals, or are you buying into syndications, or doing notes, or investing elsewhere?
Yeah, so we do some private money lending. So we've done that. So investing in, I guess you could call it note, but we do some private money lending. We have we've done a handful of flips, and I can't stand flipping. I feel like if you're going to put in all that work to renovate a property, you should keep it, right? Because I can't tell you how many times I put time, energy, and effort into a property, and I look back on that property, what it's worth now, and it made me sick to my stomach thinking about.
Yeah, so you just want to do burrs then, right?
Well, so right now, like was our main strategy, but we're buying and holding now. We've been doing that over the last 2 years.
You're buying. So cut out there. You're buying and holding what?
So we're wholesaling and focusing on buying and holding, and that's our main strategies.
So you're buying and holding rentals.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
So I would not renovate a property unless I was going to keep it for the long term.
So a burr. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What else?
So that just worked for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. So that's something like if I would have something that I would have recommended to myself much earlier, right? Because we were a little late to the party on this. We just solely focused on wholesaling for the longest time, right? But what I'd recommend is after you understand what a good deal looks like, what a bad deal looks like, and you feel really comfortable making a confident buying decision. And usually I find that comes after 12 to 18 months of focusing on wholesaling. You have a really strong idea of what buyers want, what a good deal looks like, and all that. And I feel like at that point, we should have started not flipping, but we should have started buying and holding. And man, could have changed the game today if we would have bought that early, but we didn't.
Everyone says that. I wish I had started buying and holding sooner.
Yeah.
Just curious, Chris, talk about scaling the wholesale business. It was you and your wife bumping and grinding. You were on the phone. You guys were doing it all. Do you have a team? Because you can build a wholesaling business in a way to be a passive income source if you build a team and you build a good, strong system and processes.
Oh, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about how if you have, are you working on the business more rather than in it, and how have you scaled?
Yeah, so we did scale the team. Like I said, we scaled our business to over 7 figures, and we had multiple acquisition managers. So we had like 2 or 3 people on the phones calling and making offers on properties, getting properties under contract. We had 2 disposition managers, people selling deals at one point. We had a team of 25 or 30 virtual assistants. I mean, it was crazy. We had so many people on our team, right? But we recently, in the past year and a half or 2 years, decided that we want to have a much smaller operation on purpose, because what we found is there's a point where
There's a critical point where having a bigger team doesn't get you more results.
exactly, and the only way to go past that and actually get the bigger results, you have to there's a plateau to go through, and you have to ask yourself, is it worth it for me to go through that or not? Because you actually take a big step backwards before you launch forward, right?
Yeah.
And so we just didn't want a business that was doing multiple millions of dollars a year, and we had a huge team, huge oversight and management. It just led to it led to a lot of dynamics that we just didn't really like. So we have a firm belief of keep it small, keep it all now. So one acquisition manager, one person selling deals. That person has a dispo assistant, and then a virtual assistant to help with the marketing and schedule that. And then I have a call center manager who oversees our call center in Bangladesh. And so he oversees the cold callers. So that's what we have right now.
Good for you. So are you and your wife involved in the process at all?
Only if we want to be.
So you don't even negotiate the deals or approve them. You've got a whole team that's doing it all.
Yep.
How many deals are you? So you have a call center, so multiple VAs, but you're not managing them. You have the
Right.
calls, and then you've got about a handful of other people. You guys aren't doing it. How much time are you spending on your wholesale business each day and each week?
Yeah, if I had to guess, I would say probably we spend roughly about 5 hours a week. And that's basically just managing our team's numbers, getting involved if we want to get involved, and really just keeping an eye on things. Because when you have a team, that's a lot of people say wholesaling is not a passive business, but it can be semi-passive, right? Not totally, because it still involves not only it not only involves your energy and staying on top of things, but at the same time, there's a lot of things you have to look at, right? So when you have people, you're interviewing people, you're staying on top of their numbers. But the semi-passive part is they're the ones locking up deals with sellers. They're the ones selling them to buyers, and you're not really involved in that. So that's where the semi-passive can come in. And that is a great thing to do with the wholesaling business. I just would not recommend scaling past like $1 million, because when you do that, it just opens up a whole slew of headaches, and it's just.
Or another way of putting that is just be going into that with your eyes wide open, that it's going to require a substantial leap into how you do business and how you expand. There are people that are up for that. They do want to double up, and they do want to do 2 million or more.
Yeah.
And they've got the commitment, the energy, the passion for it. That's what's so great about this business. And what I love that you're saying, Chris, is find your lane, find what you want. I coach a lot of investors that are way more successful than I am as an investor. And because that's what they want. I don't want that. I'm at a different stage in my life. I want I don't need all that. And so it's really important, and why I like this industry is you can find your lane and go at your pace and do the thing you want. And
100%.
your idea of success is very different than someone else's. And if it works for you and you're happy with the results you're getting, don't compare yourself to others.
100%.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, about 4 years ago, we suffered from a big the comparison trap, like looking at so-and-so's business. Oh man, his business is bigger. Oh man, his business is bigger. So we would scale, and then your margins go like that.
Yeah.
And then you're like, man, I wish we had a great thing going, right? So that's the biggest thing I would say. Just focus on build the business that works for you, right? You don't have to live up to anybody else's standard. Build a business that works for you and your lifestyle. And even though we have a team, I like jumping in and talking with buyers from now and then, right? It's fun. I love the selling the deal side. I love marketing, and I'm a numbers guy digging into that. So that's fun stuff. So you can do whatever it is that you want to do, and however the vision is for your business, you can run it. And that's really what I recommend people. Just focus on building a business that you want, because the worst thing you can possibly do, and this not only applies to real estate, but everything else, everything in life, right, is to build somebody else's life because you have all these expectations on you of what you should be, right? And then you're there and you're not happy.
Right.
Right. You put in all this energy and effort to build somebody else's vision, right? And you finally get there and you're like, man, this sucks.
Right.
To put it bluntly, right?
Yeah.
So build the life that you want, build the business that you want, and you'll be much happier. You'll do this for a much longer time, and you'll enjoy the journey.
And I think a lot of people, I have one client I really admire because he values family first, and he literally behaves that way. He plans out all the family vacations. He takes a lot of time off, probably a couple months worth of time off every year.
Yeah.
And he's a wholesaler and has rentals. And his family schedule gets planned out first, and then he plans his work around
It's the way to do it.
His family schedule. So plan a life and then plan the work around the life. A lot of people, it's work and life gets planned around work. So Chris, I'm just curious, anything else that you want to share before we wrap up and I ask you my last question?
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, guys, this is a journey, and you really want to focus on that. You want to put in the effort every single day and realize that you may have a bad day, you may have a bad week, but if you do everything you're supposed to, you have a great month. So stay focused. Doesn't matter what challenges you face. It's an opportunity to learn. So when we win, we celebrate. When we fail and we fall down, it's a learning experience. And if you can take that and make yourself stronger and apply to the next time, I mean, you're going to love the journey so much more, and you're going to excel like much faster.
Love that. So here's the last question. If you were to jump up on a rooftop and you had a captive audience and they were hanging on your every word and gonna soak up every ounce of wisdom that you poured out to them, what would your advice be?
Well, it's a lot of pressure here. What would my advice be if I was going to do that?
Yeah, the thing that could make the biggest difference for people.
The thing that I feel that can make the biggest difference with people is, I would say, okay, so there's a book called The One Thing by Gary Keller.
The One Thing.
This is my favorite book, and I recommend it to all my clients. And the most important thing that I can tell you guys, the biggest piece of advice that, again, if I was standing on a rooftop, this is what I'd say: focus on one thing to have success, right? So many people, when they first get into real estate, they're like, I'm going to rehab, I'm going to wholesale, I'm going to buy rentals, I'm going to creative finance, I'm going to sub 3, 4, 5, whatever, right? Whatever strategies. But, and they constantly are spinning their wheels, learning these new strategies, but then they're not doing deals because the themselves so thin. I imagine yourself like having 100% of energy, right? And let's say you do 4 different real estate strategies. That's 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. So you're never giving 100% to one thing. So if you were going to get started in real estate, what I would say, start with wholesaling first. It's the lowest form of risk and the type of strategy where you can make a very healthy income starting out, and it helps you learn the business. Start with that.
Yeah, you learn the fundamentals of the business, how to find deals, how to evaluate them, how to estimate repairs, how to talk to sellers, how to set up a process and systems.
Focus on that 12 to 18 months solely. That's it. And don't start buying rentals or doing anything else until you've done wholesaling for 12 to 18 months. That's what I recommend. Read The One Thing. It'll reinforce that point of focus, and that'll give you the best shot at success in this journey.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for taking time out of your schedule with your family to share your pearls of wisdom, your
Yep.
experience. It's
Mhm.
been such a joy. I really appreciate everything you shared today. I think you are your share today is going to help a lot of people, help make it more real, make it simpler, help them tweak some things. So I appreciate you and taking the time. It's been a joy.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed this group. You have a fun group here, and I've enjoyed talking to you and just sharing things that I feel can help other people shorten the learning curve and have success much faster.
Now we have some people on the Zoom with us: Chris Drum, Pansy Sleep,
Mm-hmm.
Gail and Vicky Unra. We've got Yvonne Presswood.
Uh-huh.
I'm just curious if anyone on the Zoom with us has any questions for Chris.
I saw Yvonne put there, thank you, Chris, for giving up the golden nuggets. You're welcome. Love it. Anything I can do to help you guys, happy to do it.
What was your biggest struggle?
What was my biggest struggle? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. So my biggest struggle. Okay, this is a good one. So my biggest struggle in the very beginning was figuring out how to fit in real estate when I was working 60 to 80 hours a week. That was a struggle in the beginning, trying to figure out how I could be consistent, how I could do things and move the ball forward every single day towards the vision that I had, right? But fit it in with my busy schedule that I had. And the cure for that, I had a sales manager at my marketing company that I used to work at. He pulled me aside and he's like, you ever heard of time blocking? And I'm like, I've never heard of time blocking, right? And so he's like, here, show me your schedule. And I showed him and he was like, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous, not having the success you want. And so he broke it down for my job, but you better believe I copy and pasted that for real estate. And so I would figure out how to insert real estate into my day, my work day, and do it even when I didn't feel like I had the time. I would post ads on Craigslist in the morning for buyers. I would return seller calls in the afternoon. And then I would also call sellers after dinner when I came home. And time blocking, that time act, just putting as much time as I could in, not the time that everyone felt like I need to put in, right? There's this pressure sometimes you feel like you have to put in 10 hours a day. And if you don't put in 10 hours a day, you're not successful. If you don't put in 5 hours a day, some people only have 2 hours a day they can put into this thing, right? And
they aren't 2 hours back to back. I love what you're saying, because one of the things I say a lot to my community, to my clients, is squeeze it into the cracks of time. It's amazing when you just have 30 minutes here and there. If you use that time wisely, you've just grabbed 2 hours out of your day that you didn't think you had. It wasn't all in one big block. I love what you're saying and it gives you a momentum, a rhythm through your day. And you get to the end of the day and you're like, wow, I got a lot done. That felt good.
Yep.
Love that.
And so at the end of the day, it's playing the hand you're dealt. That's it. Everybody's dealt different cards and you just got to play the hand that you're dealt.
Anybody else on the Zoom here? We've got Pansy, we've got Chris, we've got Yvonne. Anybody else want to ask Chris a question before we wrap up?
Yeah, I have a question. My question is, where did you find your leads? Is there a program that you get your information from?
Yeah, so we use PropStream. So if you go to getpropstreamnow.com, you can go there, 7-day free trial. It's like $97 a month. You can download 10,000 seller leads a month. But yeah, so that's what we do. We go to PropStream and we pull our lists in there, the same list that I just talked about on the call today. We pull those lists and we skip trace them. I have a friend of mine that runs a company called Lead Fusion. If anyone wants a discount code for that, just let me know and I can get that to you. But he skip traces leads for 6 cents a piece. Pretty awesome. And basically, what skip tracing is, for people who don't know that on the call, basically it's just applying a phone number to an address. It's finding a phone number for a property address so you can call that owner. But that's what we do. We use PropStream. We skip trace those to get phone numbers through the lead fusion source, and then from we call them. We load them up in a dialer and we call them.
I'm going
we
to
have found that to
tag
be
you
the
in the
fastest way.
comments, Chris, to please share the link
Yeah, let me go ahead and do
to
that.
your affiliate. You share your link to, what is it?
Lead fusion for skip tracing. And
Lead
then
fusion for skip tracing.
Yeah, so they're like an amazing company for skip tracing. I know the owner personally. I probably was his first client back in the day.
6 cents a lead is great. Usually it's 10 or more. 10
Oh
cents
yeah,
more.
and
Yeah.
I've skip traced with, there's 10 like top providers. I've skip traced them all, and his, for the combination of the price and the accuracy. I mean, we've exclusively used him over the last 7 years, so that if that tells you anything.
That's awesome.
So I'll put this in the comments here.
Pansy or Chris, do either of you have any questions for Chris before we wrap up? Okay, I think
It's been great questions,
yeah,
guys.
go ahead,
Yeah,
Pansy.
sorry, I don't have a question, but thank you for sharing all this information.
Oh, you got it. I'm happy to do it. Anything that I can do to help you guys cut the learning curve and get to the answer, I'm all for.
All right, so Chris, I'll drop those links into the chat and Facebook Live too, so people can
Perfect.
sign up under your link. Hey, Chris, thanks so much. It was such a joy. I really appreciated how practical and down to earth all your advice and your story was. You're just a normal guy, and here are these results you're getting. It's very inspiring and encouraging. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. No, I'm happy to be here. And if anyone wants to connect with me, just follow me on Facebook. It's Chris Logan, REI, CHRISLOGAN REI, and happy to connect with you on your real estate journey. But no, Rayanna, thank you for time today. I've really enjoyed speaking to your audience. You have a great group here, and I look forward to doing it again sometime.
Yay. All right, everybody. Now remember, get out there, take action, no excuses, go get results. Practice it to master it. You got to do the reps. Bye, everybody.